So today, what I thought I would like to do is start like a kind of a new series called Naso's Girls, I guess, or Naso's Victims, however you'd want to phrase it. But essentially, it's going to be about the victims of Joe Naso, and in particular, the victims that nobody knows about. So, if you have watched my latest show with Dick Wolf and Fireside Pictures, um, Secrets of a Serial Killer, Death Row Confidential, you will know that that was 3 years worth of filming, and we only focused in on, I believe, three, maybe I would say three that I was very confident in solving. A fourth one, not so much, but there was so much more to the story. Um, During those 3 years of research, I came up with a lot of possibilities and I just couldn't prove it. Again, you can speculate all you want when it comes to homicide and cold cases, missing persons, but unless you have factual evidence, at least for me, I do not put it out there. And that was one of the prerequisites that I had for the show, was that I wasn't going to put people's names out there and accuse even somebody who is as horrible as Joe Naso is. I would not, and I do not, and I would not, and I cannot point the finger at somebody if I don't have evidence. Even if, I suspect them of it, I won't put that out there. However, there are possibilities abound that Joe Naso was responsible for 28 murders, as he confessed to Bill. And there are a lot of missing persons and a lot of unidentified bodies that could have been, for a lack of a better term, and I hate to use this term, done by Joe Naso. And the reason that I hate that is when we were filming the show, we were in the woods and I had the cadaver dogs up there looking for a girl that he said he had killed on Mount Tam. And I was talking to one of Marin County detectives and I said, hey, I believe that Naso killed Pam Lamson. And the sergeant, or whoever he was, he heard me and he said, oh, he said he done Pam. It was just a classless way, I thought, to say that. Anyway, I digress. Today, I want to focus on one individual in particular, and that is the girl in the red bandana. Now, I have a binder here that I have tabbed out for Joe Naso's list of 10 murders. Okay, and in that tab, there are obviously those 10, and there's a few more that I think he was responsible for, and I have those in there as well. But this picture here, as you see on the screen right now, I spent a great deal of time researching and trying to figure out who this woman was. Because if you remember during the show, trying to think of the name of the guy, Joe's neighbor, and I can't think of it right now. But he had found this photograph buried in the garage or pool shed of Joe Naso's property. And it was on backing board, like cardboard, blown up. Now, let me ask you, as a viewer, maybe an amateur detective or a detective that's watching this. If you have a serial killer that you're investigating, he's in jail, he's been convicted of 4 murders, and you suspect him of more, you go to his house, and this is long after a search warrant is served, or maybe search warrant hasn't been served yet, and you're looking around, and in the garage there's a dirt floor, and you see something sticking up out of it, and your curiosity, you're going to go over there, I would hope, and find out what that is. And let's say that you did this and there was a corner sticking up and you started unearthing it, and you pull up a large photograph of a beautiful girl wearing a red bandana. And what would you think? What would your initial thoughts be? I'll tell you what mine was. And I could be wrong. And I think by the end of this, you're going to find out that I was wrong. But I would assume that that is a victim of Joe Naso's. And not only just a victim, a special victim. Why? And this is the beauty and the beast of trying to get into the head of serial killers and people who kill, or anybody in general. You don't know how they think. You think you know. You study them, and you think you know, but the reality is that you really don't know. But my thought is, this is buried for a reason. Why? Is it because it's a victim? It's a special victim. He wants to relive it. He pulls it out, but he has hundreds, if not thousands, of other photographs of other women inside the house, that if he wanted to relive his fantasy, that he could do that at any point without having to unearth it, dig it up. Why is that particular picture buried in his property? So, my assumption was, first off, I believed the individual that provided that information, and I still believe him, okay? I'm sorry that I don't recall his name off the top of my head. It's not because of his insignificance. He's very significant. It's due to me aging and forgetting the things that I forget. That's all that is. But he was obviously on the show. I went to his house in Arizona at the beginning of the show, and actually we filmed it first, but it wasn't shown until later on into the episodes. But I believe that he did find that, just like there was a scene that was cut out about finding a pair of gloves in a safe. And I believe that too. I believe that everything that he told me, because I don't think he had any reason to lie. But again, you're trying to understand somebody else, and it's very difficult. So, I spent many years, many a late nights trying to figure out who this beautiful girl, who I would place in her 20s and the years being in the decade of the 70s, who Joe most likely took photographs of because of this picture. And why is it buried? I went through every missing person there was. And as you saw on the show, I came up with somebody that, to me, was a dead ringer. And I thought for sure that I had it figured out. This girl, I believed, was a girl on Mount Tam, and just solely based off of the likeness of the two pictures, that it was going to be her. The disappearance of this missing person was not, it didn't add up like 100%. So that didn't make me sure of things. But what did make me sure, I thought, was the likeness. Because everybody that I showed it to said, that's her, Gail Marie Dahl. And that's why that's in the show. Because I thought for sure. No, I shouldn't say that. I was confident. I had some trepidation because the way Gail Marie Dahl went missing, It did not add up to Joe Naso's MO, but the likeness, I just thought it was her. So the show airs, and I knew during the show that it wasn't Gail Marie Dahl, because we had reached out to the police department that had her missing persons report and gave that photograph to her family. And they looked at it and they said no. Hey, that's good enough for me. Now, there's some investigators that would continue to go down that route, and that's when you have blinders on, okay? If a family member says that's not her, it's not her. That's how I take it. So I was disappointed, but I wasn't surprised. And so during that show, you see the scene where, I think you see the scene. I don't remember. I watched this show when it came out one time through, and that was it. But I think they show my disappointment in there that it wasn't Gail Marie Dahl. So the show airs, and I get a surprise email from a woman who says, I was watching your show last night, which was such a great show, and imagine my surprise and horror to see myself on your show. You're trying to figure out who this girl in the red bandana is. And as soon as I saw it, I said, it's me. She said, and all of a sudden my phone started blowing up. People were calling me. Did you see that you were on this show? They're looking for you. So from that email, I gave her my phone number. Call me. Let's work through this. And she was so super sweet and nice. And I was able to find out that picture, that photograph that was buried, that I spent months looking for who that person was in fact a lovely lady who used to be a model named Georgia Durante. And as a matter of fact, Georgia Durante has written a book, The Company She Keeps, which she so graciously signed and sent to me. And it's a beautiful book, and she was a beautiful person, and I was glad that we got to meet under these unfortunate and odd circumstances. But Georgia's alive and well, which takes me back to why was this photograph buried? Was it a victim that got away? Now, Georgia couldn't remember at first who Joe Naso was. She had done so many modeling gigs, and you could, tell by her natural beauty. And I believe she was the Kodak girl back in the day. And I do remember going through Naso's photographs and seeing Kodak a lot, and not the brand, just the brand, but pictures of what are they, negatives that he had kept, and they would say Kodak on them. And some of them very well could have been Georgia. You got to understand, Naso had thousands of photographs, and Naso had also done a collage that he had given Bill. And that was my jump off point to start looking for victims, because he had signed it to Bill when they were in San Quentin prison and said, here are a few of my friends, me and a few of my friends. And I thought that it's possible that it was a pretty macabre joke and they were all dead, but he had thousands of photographs, and thousands of people that were not dead. You know what I mean? He didn't kill them all. So Georgia eventually we stayed in touch, and she one night called me and said, I think I remember him now. And she said something about, I think I gave him a recipe for soup or something. And it immediately triggered my mind back to another photograph that I had saw of a girl, I believe her name was Danica, who was Miss Denmark or Miss Sweden, who he also photographed topless. And they were looking for her. She actually testified at his trial. He let her go as well. And why? Well, she believes that she was let go because she made him chicken soup. So when Georgia said this about a recipe or something, I thought, wow, could it be that simple? Is she the one that got away? And I don't know. I guess I'll never know. I mean, Joe Naso has my number. We were supposed to talk, but it never came to fruition. And why am I just now talking about this? Well, my contract with NBC is finally up, where I was precluded to talk about Naso's cases and his victims and potential victims. I couldn't do that for 3 months after the show aired. So now that it's up, I want to talk about it because it's very important to get these girls' photographs and pictures out there in order to solve. I mean, you know, look, we solved 3, and maybe there's a few more in here that I'm kind of intrigued about. And if we get the word out, maybe somebody else can come forward and say, you know what, that was my sister. Yesterday, I got an email from Rebecca Jean Dunn's relatives. Rebecca Jean Dunn was featured as a missing person in the television show as well. And we're trying to work through that to see if she is indeed a victim of Joe Naso's or not. She was one of the ones that I was less confident about. I said 3 out of the 4. Ruth Lynn Connis, the girl from Berkeley, I was the most confident about being a victim of Joe Naso. But the Pam Lampson being another one I was very confident about. And then the third one I was most confident was Daly Cities with Charlotte Cook. And then the fourth one, you know, they put in the show Rebecca Jean Dunn, but I wasn't as confident about that. There was some things, and when I do the episode on her, you know, I will explain what those things were that led us to believe that she was quite possibly a victim. You've seen most of it on the show, but there's others. But what this series, I guess, is going to focus on, other than the victims, is the victims' initials. Because I just couldn't get over the randomness that these victims, not all of them, but a lot of them, had the same initials. And I came up with the theory, and I still don't think it's a great theory, but you know, I'm racking my brain as to why do they have all the same initials? You know, the first initial matching the last name first initial, like Charlotte Cook, CC. And it was when I found Charlotte Cook that it hit me that Joe Naso was such an admirer of Carl Chessman. And Carl Chessman actually invited Joe Naso to his execution. And when I found Charlotte Cook, I was like, maybe that's it. CC. Carl Chessman. And then the bigger picture came to me that, well, maybe it's not just Charlotte Cook, it's Pam Parsons, Tracy Tafoya, um, Sarah Dillon. Her alias has the double initials as well, and I can't think of what that is right now, but maybe that's why he's doing it. Now, I don't feel confident about that, but it was a theory that I had thrown out there, and I had told Bill, and he said, "Oh my gosh, you figured it out," and he was pretty excited about it. He actually put that in his book. I think he took credit that he had come up with that theory, and that's fine by me. I mean, I know how it happened, but I'm not confident about that. It seems a little flimsy, and it's okay to be wrong, and I say that a lot. Just like I was wrong about Gail Marie Dahl, and just like I was wrong about Georgia Durante being a victim of Joe Naso's because he had buried that photograph. And it wasn't, again, just a small photograph. It was a very large photograph pasted on a piece of cardboard that was buried. I was wrong. And that was one of the things that I'm very glad to be wrong about. And I'm sure Georgia Durante is very glad that I was wrong about it as well. I'm going to try to do with the help of Georgia is have her on here, and we will talk about her experience modeling and in general, especially in the 70s, such a dangerous profession with all the serial killers that ran rampant back then, and how she feels and how she felt about seeing herself on television, knowing that a serial killer had her photograph buried in his garage. Pretty fascinating to me. But again, there's a lot of stuff that I want to go through. I want to talk a lot about Pam Lamson, and why I feel confident that Joe Naso and not Rodney Alcala was responsible for that murder. You got to understand there was hours and hours of footage that the show did not get into, and I want to get into it because it's important. Let's make no mistake, the television networks and executives, I hate to speak for them, but I would dare say that they don't care about justice. If it happens, they're happy. But for them, the bottom line is money, the dollar, And for me, the bottom line is to help these victims' families. So I always get the question, how do you become a cold case detective? Ken Maines, how did you become a cold case detective? Well, I had that in mind a long time ago, over 10 years ago. And I got the answer right here. Mastering Cold Case Investigations, a guidebook for detectives. I wrote this 550-page behemoth for that purpose. Because when I was in high school, when I was in college, and then when I became a detective, I wanted to know more about cold cases, why they go cold, why are they unsolved? Is it evidence? Is it lack of determination? Is it perseverance? Is it politics? All the above. Well, I set the answer to all those questions in my new book. It's been 10 years of research, writing, jotting down things. I knew that I was going to write this book eventually. And it finally has come to a head where I'm able to actually get it done, get it published by Unsolved No More Publishing, and get it out to you. So, who's this book for? It's for detectives. It's for amateur detectives. It's for college students, academia, forensics. The topics I cover in this book, from what is a cold case, victimology, research, crime scene location, criminal profiling, conflict, greed, sex and revenge, possibilities versus probabilities. That is huge in this book. I go through that a lot because that's the basis and foundation of my methodology. Evidence, sketches. Of course, you have affirmations. Why should you listen? Social media, the rule of psychology, equivocal deaths, modus operandi, signature. Legal and ethical considerations in cold cases, integrity, involving as a cold case detective, serial killers, missing persons, domestic violence, exposing myths, premeditation versus spontaneous, confidential informants, wrongly convicted, clandestine graves, you name it. I cover it in here. 550-page hardcover textbook. And along with all those topics, I also wanted to do case studies, especially case studies on confessions. Why? Because you can learn so much from confessions. At the end of the book, I go in great detail about killers in general who have confessed, why they did it, and what we can learn. That's always the most important thing, what we can learn from them and move forward and apply what we learned on that case to a future case. So I have all that. I tried to incorporate as much as I could, and there's a lot in there about real life cases that I have worked on and I have either solved or learned something from. And I'll tie that to a specific chapter, along with tips, certain things that I think you should look for in certain areas. It's a great book to learn from, but it's not just for active law enforcement members, private investigators, defense attorneys. Everybody can learn from this book. And that is what is motivated me to write this. Is I want people to learn. I am tired of seeing wrongfully convicted people. I'm tired of the politics of district attorneys' offices and state police and local jurisdictions who either don't have the resources to do it or they just pass it off because they don't know how, they don't want to, they don't have the desire, the determination. And all that does is affect the victims and the victims' families. And I see it time and time again. You will see endorsements and affirmations from victims' family members in here who I've worked with in the past because they are the most important people. To pass off what I have learned to you. So you can be a great investigator, you can be a great detective, and you can solve cases just like I do. Get your copy now. I'll sign it. I'll get it out to you and start learning. That way we can start solving cold cases together. Meeting Pam Lamson's brother, meeting Lynn Connis's brother, and meeting Charlotte Cook's children. I mean, as you saw in the show, and if you haven't seen, go look, go watch it. It's on Amazon Prime and NBC Peacock. It was so emotional. And it's almost so emotional that you don't want to do it anymore. It's almost like that. I never had to give a death notification in my 16 years as a detective and a police officer. Never had to do it. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I didn't. But as you saw here, it's basically I've done it through cold case investigations. and had to give that notification 50 years later. It's not any easier, I wouldn't imagine. Um, it's difficult. Death is a subject that's so taboo in a way. People don't like to talk about it, but I am almost obsessed with it, meaning I think about it all the time. My death, other people's death, how they went through it, religion, all that stuff. And I don't want to get into my personal stuff. Like, I don't like talking about that. I want to keep this about the victims and things like that. But that's the reason I do this, is because of the victims' families. And I really don't care if you don't believe that, because there's people that don't. But that's the truth. And I would ask that you go and talk to any of the victims' family members that I've worked for, and they will tell you that. So that's why I do it, and I continue to do it, and why I've been waiting for this contract to end so that I could talk about these other victims. So there isn't a lot of talk about Joe Naso related about Georgia Durante, because she's not a victim of his, and that makes me happy. But I wanted to get her story out there because I think that's fascinating enough, that her photograph was buried and she is not a victim, and she reached out to me and said, "Hey, I'm still alive. You're looking for me." Such a surreal moment. And for me, I can't even imagine for her. But hopefully we can have her on here and she can tell you how she felt, if she remembers more about meeting Naso and getting that photograph modeling session done. And I thought maybe she was one of the girls on Mount Tam. But as you will see as we go forward in this series about Naso, I believe I think I know who the girl on Mount Tam is. There's two of them. One was Pam Lamson. We have established that, and I'm very confident about that. But the second one is where I'm going to need your help, because I believe I got a photograph. I narrowed it down, and I'll get into how I figured that out and how I narrowed it down. And it wasn't on the show. And I have to put a name to the face. Again, this is why this platform is so important. It's because we can do that. We have the viewership to do that. So look forward to that episode on Mount Tam. Joe Naso also claimed that he killed a couple girls in Las Vegas, and he killed a couple in LA. I investigated the ones in Los Angeles pretty heavily, and I think there's some very good clues there. But I haven't been able to figure it out, and that's why I need you. I'm going to give you the clues and let you figure it out with me. And together, we'll be able to solve more cold cases. Okay? We just have to work together and get the information out. I'm all about honesty and transparency. Law enforcement has tried to censor me. The FBI included a little bit, but I won't allow it. Okay? I won't allow it. This is too important. So get ready for the next couple of weeks to go down the Joe Naso rabbit hole, and you're going to learn so much more about this very devious and cunning serial killer. And he was very good at his craft to go undetected for as long as he has. But, again, there's no expiration date on justice, and his time is up. And we've started exposing him for what he has done, and I'm going to continue to do it. And we're going to continue to look at possible victims of Joe Naso. And I'll show you the photographs that we found during the search warrant. I will show you, pictures from the search warrant, mannequins that he had, stockings, drawings, all in an effort to try to solve the murders of Joe Naso. So, Georgia Durante, hey, thank you for getting a hold of me and letting me know that you are alive and well and you were not a victim of Joe Naso and you lived such an intriguing life. And please go out and buy this book, The Company She Keeps by Georgia Durante. Thanks for watching. Main's out.